This story takes place in the Ural Mountains, located in the west-central part of Russia. They serve as the boundary between Europe and Asia. The mountains are 40,150 kilometers wide, stretch roughly north to south from the coast of the Kara Sea in the Arctic Ocean to the Ural River Valley, and span more than 2,500 kilometers. The average altitude is 300 meters, with the highest peak, Narodnaya Peak, at 1,895 meters above sea level. The Ural Mountains have perennial snow and frozen soil. The eastern and western slopes are asymmetrical, with the western slope being relatively gentle. Mountaineering enthusiasts or expedition groups often begin their journeys from here. While the altitude of the Urals is not very high, the higher latitude and harsh climate make mountaineering here challenging and risky. The main character of the story is named Igor Dyatlov, a student of the Faculty of Radio Engineering at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. He had a strong aptitude for Hansen work and was able to assemble a radio at the age of 15. In addition to his love for radio, Dyatlov also had a strong interest in mountaineering and hiking. After entering the Ural Polytechnic Institute, he joined the school's sports club and regularly participated in various mountaineering and hiking activities, mostly in the Urals. He had 9 mountaineering experiences, serving as team leader for 5 of them. In the winter of 1959, Dyatlov planned another hiking expedition. The destination was Mount Otorten, a mountain 1,182 meters above sea level located in the Sverdlovsk region. In the local language, the name of this mountain means "don't go," but Dyatlov was tempted to challenge it. He even chose the difficult winter season for the trip. After setting the destination, Dyatlov began recruiting partners, and the team expanded to 10 people, including 2 female members. 9 of the 10 people were from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, with Dyatlov as the team leader. After consulting with a geologist, Dyatlov and his teammates planned the specific itinerary for the mountaineering trip. According to the plan, on the day of departure, everyone would gather at the school in the city of Sverdlovsk. They would travel through Ivdol to Vizhai, where they would take a break. On January 28th, they would set off for their destination, Mount Otorten. After crossing the mountain, they were expected to return to Vizhai on February 12th. The entire trip was expected to last about 20 days. The mountaineering team submitted their plan to the Sverdlovsk City Route Commission, a subordinate department of the Sports and Exercise Commission, and it was approved. The mountaineering team, led by Dyatlov, held second-class mountaineering certificates issued by the Soviet government. They were an experienced group of climbers. Because their trip was planned for the cold winter and the route was considered difficult, the relevant departments believed that all team members would receive a Level 3 mountaineering certificate, the highest level issued by the Soviet government at the time, upon their successful return. During this trip, however, no one could have imagined that the team members would suffer a catastrophe. Their experience has since caused a worldwide sensation and is considered one of the most bizarre mountaineering events in human history, known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident. On January 23, 1959, a Friday, the 10-person mountaineering team led by 23-year-old Dyatlov officially began their 20-day hiking trip. As planned, the team got on a train. After a 2-day journey, they arrived at Ivdol. After a short stay, they transferred to a bus at 7 a.m. and reached Vizhai at 2 p.m. After a few days of travel, the team members were slightly tired, so they decided to rest in town for a day before continuing. After settling in at a local lodge, they went to a local club to watch a movie called The Golden Symphony Night, and then had a good night's sleep, which swept away the fatigue of their journey. The next day, January 26th, the team members all wrote a letter and sent it home. Dyatlov, the leader, went to the local post office to send the letter and a telegram to the school sports club, reporting that they had arrived in Vizhai and everything was going smoothly according to plan. After lunch, at 1:10 p.m., the mountaineering team left Vizhai in an open truck. Due to the low temperature and the lack of a windshield, one of the team members, Yudin, became ill from the wind and snow, and his sciatic nerve began to hurt. At 4:30 p.m., the team arrived at a settlement called District 41, 40 kilometers north of Vizhai. There, they were warmly received by the local population. They talked with residents, took a group photo, and watched 3 more movies in the evening. Another day passed. January 27th was the 5th day of the team's departure. The 10 members left the District 41 settlement and hiked toward their goal, Mount O'Torton. After a day of walking, Uden's condition worsened. The pain from his sciatic nerve inflammation was unbearable. After much consideration, he decided to return on his own so as not to slow everyone down. Thus, the number of team members was reduced from 10 to 9. On January 31st, after 4 more days of hiking, the team arrived in the valley of the Lazva River. They stored some food and equipment in a wooded area to reduce their load, planning to pick it up on their return trip. They departed on February 1st, the 10th day of their trip and the 5th day of their trek. The team left the river valley and began to cross the pass. They planned to climb over in one day and camp on the other side of the mountain, but unexpected situations disrupted their plans. Due to bad weather and a blizzard that reduced visibility, the team lost their way and deviated from their planned course. They came to Mount Koletsyakhl, 20 kilometers south of their target peak. The peak is 1,079 meters above sea level, hence it is also known as Mount 1079. Mount Koletsyakhl is located at the junction of the Komi Republic and the Sverdlovsk region. In the local language, Mount Koletsyakhl means Mountain of Death. At 5 p.m., the mountaineering team reached the eastern slope of Mount 1079 and finally realized they were going in the wrong direction. After some research, they found that 1.5 kilometers below their current location was a forest with relatively flat terrain that could shield them from the wind and snow, making it suitable for camping. However, going down the mountain would mean that all their efforts so far would be in vain, as they would have to give up the heights they had already climbed. Since it was getting late, everyone decided not to go down to the flat terrain at the foot of the mountain, but to camp on the hillside instead. It was this decision that completely changed the fate of the 9 people. According to the plan, the mountaineering team should have successfully returned to town within 2 weeks. Before their departure, the team had agreed with the school sports club that they would return to Vizhai on February 12th and send a telegram to report their safety. However, because the team got lost in the wind and snow, their return was postponed. On February 12th, the school sports club did not receive the telegram as scheduled. Considering that the completion time of a climb can be affected by many factors, it is common to postpone the time by a day or 2. In addition, Uden, the team member who had returned due to illness, said that Dyatlov had told him to expect a few days' delay. So, even without a telegram, the school club did not think it was a big deal. They believed that the mountaineers were very experienced and would definitely be able to return safely. However, since this group of team members were all students, their parents became extremely anxious when they learned that the school had not received the telegram. They repeatedly asked the school for updates. To appease the parents, the head of the club lied, claiming that a telegram from the mountaineering team had been received and that the parents could rest assured. The date came to February 20th. 8 days had passed since the scheduled return to Vizhai on February 12th, and the school club still had not received a telegram from the mountaineering team. They no longer hid the truth and told the parents. The parents then asked the school to immediately send people to search and rescue. That day, a voluntary search and rescue team of teachers and students from the school set off to find traces of the mountaineering team. Soon after, the military also sent helicopters to join the search operation. The search and rescue team followed the mountaineering team's planned route, but found no trace of them along the way. It wasn't until 6 days later, on February 26th, that a student on the search and rescue team found the mountaineering team's tent on Mount 1079. When it was discovered, the tent was crushed by snow. The camp was located on the northeast slope of Mount 1079, a 30-degree slope, 300 meters from the top of the mountain. The ground where the tent was located was relatively flat, and 8 pairs of skis were used at the bottom to support the tent. The entrance faced south, and the top was covered with 15 to 20 centimeters of snow. A flashlight was found on the side of the tent, but its battery had run out. Inside the tent, search and rescue personnel found 9 backpacks containing the team members' coats, pants, socks, hats, and other personal items. The tableware and food were also still there. For cameras, and 5 diaries of the mountaineers were also found. The last entry in the diaries was January 31st. From this, the search and rescue personnel speculated that the team had gotten lost on February 1st and came to Mount 1079. However, These clues failed to answer the doubts of the search and rescue personnel. The mountaineering team was a group of experienced climbers. Why did they choose to camp on the hillside? Uden, the first member to return, guessed that after being hit by a blizzard on the first day, the team had not walked far and did not want to give up the heights they had achieved, so they chose to camp on the hillside. Search and rescue personnel also found many scratches on the tent, which were formed by cutting with a knife from the inside. The size of one of the holes was large enough for a person to pass through. But the most important question was where the team members were. After finding the people, all doubts could be answered. Outside the tent, search and rescue personnel found a series of footprints. After distinguishing them, there were 9 sets of footprints, which corresponded to the 9 team members. The footprints showed that some people were wearing only one shoe, while others wore none. In such a cold place, it was incredible that the climbers were not wearing clothes and shoes. Maybe something urgent happened to them at that time. This series of footprints extended northward and disappeared after 500 meters. The search and rescue personnel conducted a search near where the footprints last appeared, but did not find any climbers. They guessed that the team might have continued north, so they tried to look in that direction. Sure enough, 1.5 kilometers north of the camp, they found a forest with a very tall Siberian pine tree. They found traces of a fire under the tree. Based on the burnt ashes and the size of the remaining branches, it was judged that the fire had burned for about an hour and a half. Near the fire, socks, handkerchiefs, and fragments of wool jackets were scattered. There were traces of climbing on the pine tree, with some lower branches below 5 meters broken and scattered under the tree. Apparently, someone had stayed in the tree, possibly to climb up and look into the distance. 2 or 3 meters away from the pine tree, search and rescue personnel found 2 climbers, Doroshenko and Krivonischenko. The 2 were lying in the cold snow with no vital signs. They were wearing only underwear and no shoes. Doroshenko had burns on his hands. The next day, search and rescue personnel continued to focus on this pine tree and expand their search. On this day, 300 meters away from the pine tree, they found Dyatlov, the leader, and team member Komogorova. 6 days later, Slobodin was discovered again at a distance of 480 meters from the pine tree. The remains of these 3 people were found on the path between the pine tree and the camp, and their heads were all facing the camp, indicating that they were trying to return to the tent. The 5 people found were examined by forensic doctors. Doroshenko, 180 centimeters tall and the strongest member of the team, was wearing only a shirt and a sleeveless top when discovered. The right side of his shorts was torn, and the socks on his feet were burned. Forensic doctors believed he had suffered blunt force trauma that caused pulmonary edema and lung contusion, but it was not fatal. However, the body spots on his body did not match the location of the find, indicating that someone had moved him after his death. Krivonischenko, found in the same location, was wearing a top and shorts and a torn sock on his left foot. His face was gone, and there was blood, but the tip of his nose was gone. In his mouth, a part of the epidermis of the right hand was found, leading to speculation that he probably bit his own hand to stay awake or was crying. The forensic results showed that he suffered third-degree burns, with the surface of his fingers and the toes of his left foot burned. He had no other trauma. The team leader Dyatlov, when discovered, had his hands clenched into fists in front of his chest. He was wearing a sleeveless vest and a blue sweater with no shoes. He had a cotton sock on his left foot and a wool sock on his right. The watch on his wrist had stopped at 5:31. There was dried blood on his lips, but he had no internal injuries. The female team member Komogorova was relatively fully dressed and was the only woman among the 5 found so far. She wore a long-sleeved top and 2 sweaters on her upper body, with one of the sweater cuffs torn. She had 2 pairs of pants on her lower body and 3 pairs of socks on her feet, one of which was a pair of wool socks. She had a stick-like bruise on her waist that was not fatal. Slobodin was wearing a shirt and a sweater, 2 pairs of pants, and 4 pairs of socks. He also had a shoe on his right foot. The watch on his wrist had stopped at 8:45. Slobodin's skull had a small crack, a skull fracture. The forensic examiner believed he was in shock after being hit, lost coordination, and died of accelerated hypothermia. Although the first 5 people discovered had some bruises on their bodies, none of them were fatal. The forensic doctor believed that all of them died of hypothermia. Taking into account the ambient air temperature, The preliminary forensic inference was that they had died more than half a month ago. Based on the condition of these 5 people, the possibility of unnatural causes was quickly ruled out. However, with the subsequent discovery of the remaining 4 climbers, the overall course of events changed. It was May, 2 months after the discovery of the 5 team members. At this time, the temperature had risen significantly, and the snow on the mountain had melted. Many search and rescue teams began to continue searching for the remaining 4 people, although everyone in their hearts felt that the 4 were already gone. The indigenous Mansi people, who lived near the Urals and were semi-nomadic and familiar with the mountainous environment, soon joined the search and rescue team and provided a lot of help. The hard work paid off. During the search, a Mansi man and his dog noticed scattered branches not far from the pine tree. They followed the branches and, at a distance of 50 meters from the tree, found black sweatpants with a partially torn right leg, suspected to have been left by the mountaineers. After continuing to search, they found the remaining 4 people in a ravine 75 meters from the pine tree. All 4 of them were lying in the canyon, covered with up to 4 meters of thick snow. In the search operation more than 2 months earlier, search and rescue personnel had not found them because the snow was too thick. In fact, they were not far from the pine tree. Judging from their clothes, they were more bundled up than the 5 people found earlier and were wrapped in torn pieces of clothing, speculated to have been torn from other team members. This could also explain why the previous 5 people were wearing very thin clothes. Forensic doctors examined the 4, but the results surprised everyone. The female team member Dubinina, the other woman in the team, was wearing 2 shirts and 2 sweaters on her upper body, 2 pairs of pants, and 2 pairs of socks on her feet. She also had a hat on her head. Dubinina was missing the soft tissue from her face, as well as her eyeballs and tongue. The cause of death was right atrial hemorrhage, multiple rib fractures, and internal bleeding. When Zolotarev was found, he was wearing 2 hats, a scarf, a long-sleeved shirt, a black sweater, and a coat. He had 3 pairs of pants on his lower body. He was missing the soft tissue around his left eye and his eyeballs. He had multiple rib fractures and an open wound on the right side of his skull. Both Dubinina and Zolotarev had myocardial hemorrhage and pleural bleeding, which indicated that they were alive when they were injured. Both had multiple rib fractures, but the soft tissues of their chests were not damaged. This is not common. Forensic doctors believe that this was similar to the trauma caused by a bomb shock wave. Team member Thibaut Brignol was wearing a leather hat and a knitted beanie, a cardigan, and a fur jacket. He had 3 pairs of pants on his lower body and was wearing woolen socks and Siberian felt boots designed to protect against the cold. He had 2 watches on his wrist, one of which stopped at 8:14 and the other at 8:39. His skull was fractured. The forensic doctor ruled out an accidental fall on a rock, but it is worth mentioning that the fracture of his skull had no corresponding trauma wound. The skull, which protects the brain, is very hard and can generally withstand a force of 200 kilograms. Forensic doctors believe that causing such injuries to Thibaut Brignol would require a lot of force, even comparable to the damage caused by a car accident. Team member Kovatov was wearing a sweater, a cardigan, and a ski jacket on his upper body. He had 3 pairs of pants on his lower body and woolen socks on his feet. The soft tissue around his eye was missing, as were his eyebrows. His neck was deformed, and he had open trauma behind his ear, with his skull exposed. His skin was gray-green and slightly purple, and the skin on his fingers and feet had become soft and white, consistent with signs of rot in a humid environment. Among these 4 people, in addition to Kovatov, whose cause of death was hypothermia, the remaining 3 died of their injuries, and it would have taken a lot of force to cause such damage. The strange thing is that all 4 had facial soft tissue loss, with even their eyeballs, tongues, and eyebrows gone. There was also an unusual finding. Radioactive material was detected on the clothes worn by Dubinina and Zolotarev. Zolotarev had a camera around his neck. This was the 5th camera found by search and rescue personnel. In the ice and snow, the climbers didn't even have time to put on their coats and shoes. Yet Zolotarev did not forget to bring a camera. Search and rescue personnel suspected that the camera might have something very important on it, but unfortunately, the film was damaged by blood and could not be recovered. So far, all 9 mountaineers, including team leader Dyatlov, had been killed. They died an estimated 6 to 8 hours after their last meal. 3 of the 9 died from injuries caused by force. This was obviously different from ordinary mountaineering accidents, and the Soviet military intervened in the investigation. After a period of investigation, Soviet officials concluded that there were no signs of a fight at the scene. The Mansi people who lived 80 kilometers away were friendly, and it was impossible to determine whether the incident was a man-made murder. The official Soviet investigation concluded that the 9 climbers were hit by a powerful unknown force. After the investigation results were released, the criminal proceedings in the incident were terminated. A detailed investigation report on the incident was also classified, and all materials were kept in secret archives. The time has come to 2018. A full 59 years had passed since the Dyatlov incident. This event was so mysterious that it attracted the attention of people all over the world who wanted to figure out what exactly happened to the 9 team members that year. Journalists from the Russian newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda took the initiative to continue the investigation. In April 2018, the remains of Zolotarev were exhumed and re-examined by experts. Unexpectedly, the DNA results showed that the DNA extracted from the body believed to be Zolotarev's had no similarity to any of his living relatives. Therefore, the reporter doubted that the person buried in the cemetery was Zolotarev himself at all. Facial reconstruction of the skull was later performed, and it was confirmed that it matched Zolotarev's photo. Although the official investigation has not been able to move forward, folk speculation has never stopped. In 1999, with the help of the Ural State Technical University, the Dyatlov Foundation was founded. The foundation aims to advance the investigation into the Dyatlov incident and properly preserve the items left by the mountaineers. There are as many as 75 speculations about this event. One speculation is that the team got lost and mistakenly broke into the sacred place of the local Mansi people, so they were attacked. There were rumors before that a female geologist who mistakenly entered their territory was tied up and thrown into a lake by the Mansi. However, while footprints of the mountaineers can be seen around the camp, there are no traces of fighting. Mount Koletskaya is also not a holy place for the Mansi. This kind of speculation is therefore self-defeating. Another speculation is that the climbers were attacked by snowmen. The Discovery Channel's 2014 film, Russia's Yeti Killer is Still Alive, mentions this speculation. Those who hold this view believe that there is a snowman in Russia called the Yeti, which is tall, similar to an orangutan, and lives in alpine snow. The team mistakenly broke into the snowman's territory, and the snowman ate their eyeballs and tongues. Among the 4 cameras found in the camp, there is a photo in Thibaut Brignol's camera showing a road to the forest. Not far from the roadside, a blurred figure is standing, which looks like an orangutan. Proponents of the snowman theory believe that it is a snowman. Author Donny Ikar, in his book, Mount of Death, The Untold True Story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, raised another speculation. He thought that infrasound was the reason for the death of all 9 team members. Donny Ikar took 5 years to study the Dyatlov incident and personally went to Mount 1079 to spend the night to experience the feelings of the 9 team members that night. He believes that Mount 1079 has a unique mountain shape with a perfect dome at the top. Strong winds blowing through here can be distorted, forming the Kármán vortex street phenomenon. The Kármán vortex street is a hydrodynamic phenomenon proposed by the American-Hungarian mechanic Theodor von Kármán. This phenomenon refers to the passage of airflow through a cylinder, which creates a vortex between the left and right sides. When a fluid passes through certain objects, the sides of the object will periodically fall off, and the rotation direction will be reversed, arranged in regular double-row vortices. After that, the vortices will attract and interfere with each other, forming a nonlinear vortex street. Author Donny Ikar believes that at the time of the incident, there were strong winds passing through Mount 1079, which formed a Kármán vortex street. This created low-frequency infrasound. Although the mountaineers could not hear the sound, the infrasound had a terrible impact on their bodies and minds, causing shortness of breath, inexplicable fear, and so on. That's why the team members would use knives to open the tent in order to escape quickly. In February 2019, a full 60 years after the incident, the relevant Russian departments reopened the investigation into the Dyatlov incident. The conclusion of the previous survey was caused by supernatural phenomena. After a year of reinvestigation, on July 11, 2020, the official results of the investigation were announced. It is believed that the real cause of the Dyatlov incident was a slab avalanche that occurred at that time. Slab avalanches occur when the weight of the snow cover in an area is greater than the strength it can support, causing an avalanche. Investigators believe that when the mountaineering team arrived at the camp location on Mount 1079, the snow was still relatively loose, and the condensation between the snow was not strong. When the team set up a tent here, they dug up some of the snow to create a relatively level piece of ground. This move made the bottom layer of snow that supported the snow above weaker. At that time, a blizzard was raging, and there was a lot of snow on the hillside. Gradually, the loose snow at the bottom could no longer support the weight. The snow on the surface slid toward the mountain like a slab, causing a small slab-like avalanche. After the team members heard the sound of an avalanche, they wanted to leave the tent, so they immediately cut open the tent with a knife and ran away barefoot without time to change clothes or put on shoes. After running to safety, they stopped. Because the mountaineers did not have time to put on clothes to keep out the cold, they quickly broke some branches and made a fire to warm themselves. The avalanche was not large, and the blood loss was less than a typical avalanche, so although the avalanche collapsed the tent, it did not cover the footprints of the team. After the avalanche ended, the team wanted to return to the tent to retrieve supplies. Their body temperature had been dropping, and their lives were at stake. Then they ran into a difficult problem. It was late when the avalanche happened, and the team members had just run away without paying attention to the direction. Now they didn't know where the tent was. So, someone climbed the pine tree to try to look from above to see if they could see the tent. After that, team leader Dyatlov took several team members with him on the way back to the camp. The rest waited in place. Due to hypothermia, they unfortunately failed to return. He froze to death halfway on the way back, unable to wait for supplies. The two team members who were waiting under the pine tree also froze to death. They were so cold that they lost consciousness while they were still alive. To maintain their body temperature, they desperately approached the fire and, as a result, their hands were burned. After that, the four people who were still alive tried to keep warm. They tore off the clothes of their two deceased teammates to maintain their own body temperature. They left the fire and continued walking down the mountain, hoping to find a safer place. The four of them walked 75 meters from the pine tree and dug a snow hole, hoping to resist the wind and snow. But what they didn't expect was that the ravine happened to be right below the snow cave. After the four people fell into the ravine, they were buried under the snow again. Their eyeballs and tongues may have been eaten by scavengers. As for the radioactive material detected on their clothes, it may have been caused by the local environment. In 1957, 2 years before the Dyatlov incident, the Soviet Union had the third largest nuclear accident in human history, the KYSHDYM nuclear waste explosion. The accident occurred 600 kilometers south of Mount 1079. Investigators believe that the radioactive material from the accident floated to Mount 1079 and contaminated the environment and the clothes of the mountaineers. In 2021, a team of physicists and engineers led by Professor Alexander Puzrin from ETH Zurich and Professor Johann Gaum from the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne published an article. Through modeling and simulation experiments, they provided support for the slab avalanche theory. They found that each cubic meter of snow in a slab avalanche can weigh up to 400 kilograms, capable of causing serious injuries to the human chest and head. This also explains why the mountaineers suffered from high-pressure injuries. After the incident, a mountain pass on Mount 1079 was named Dyatlov Pass in honor of the leader of the mountaineering team. A monument was erected 500 meters southeast of the camp to commemorate all the mountaineers who died. The only survivor, Yudin, who had returned early due to injury, died of an illness in 2013. He dedicated his life to exploring the true cause of the accident, but, unfortunately, he could not wait for the final result. It's gratifying that the results of the 2020 official Russian survey are currently the most credible explanation. 61 years after the events of Dyatlov Pass, everything has finally come to light.